So here's the question. Is it a good idea to look at your opponent's rating before your game? I'm going to attempt to answer that, and later on, I'll share some anecdotes regarding pushy chess parents. That's coming up on the Chess Angle. Okay, welcome to the Chess Angle. So, should you look at and consider your opponent's rating? Is it something you should think about? Is it a good idea? What is the psychology involved with your opponent's rating? That's what we're going to be looking at. And some of what I say may seem a little obvious, but at my club, even with strong players, I've been seeing some interesting results and some interesting scenarios, so to speak, because of the opponent's rating, or presumably, because I'll notice they play one way against someone rated higher or the same, and then a different way against someone rated lower. And I go through it myself. Now, as far as your opponent's rating, where it really comes into play is if your opponent is rated significantly lower or higher, not so much if your ratings are similar. So, for example, some will try to force a win against a lower rated player, and they'll actually play worse. And conversely, they'll get very nervous against a higher rated player, and they'll play in a very hesitant manner. And I see this all the time. Jeremy Silman, who I like, you'll hear me mention him a lot. He's an international master. I think he's a phenomenal teacher. He calls this a win for the rating system. Like when the rating system basically takes over the brain of both players, so to speak. And very often, a higher rated player will win because the lower rated player just gives him too much credit, something like that. Something to think about. But another point that Silman makes, and this is true because I've seen it myself, both as a tournament director and a player, is that all players, especially untitled players, are capable of playing very badly, or they're capable of playing quite well. But it's absolutely true. So you could have a 1900 player who could have a phenomenal night, and he can just as easily have a very poor night. He could play almost like a beginner. And I've also seen players rated as low as 1,000 who have a phenomenal night. I mean, it's the old saying, even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. That may be, not the best analogy, but you get the idea. I mean, I've seen players rated as low as 800 or 1,000 or 1,200, that range, play phenomenal chess because they're just having a great night. And I've seen players rated 2,000 who make mistakes a beginner would be embarrassed by. So it's an interesting type of interplay. And what I'm noticing, and this happened just the other night, is a lot of the higher rated players at the club are trying to force things against the lower rated players, and they're getting into trouble. And, of course, the lower rated players being nervous against the higher rated players, they're looking at them as, as if they don't make mistakes. That's also an issue as well. But what I'm noticing more of is the higher rated playing, not their best game, making a lot of mistakes, believe it or not, against lower rated players. So it's an interesting thing that I'm witnessing. And ultimately, it can be very risky to change your style for different rated players. But that's what I'm seeing, happening. I believe, you should play the same solid game that you normally would, regardless of the player's rating. But that's easier said than done, and that's a trap that I fall into as well. Now, as far as where knowing your player's rating can be beneficial, really has to do, in my opinion, with even positions. It's very often the positions where it's even and where it's very drawish, where a clear plan is not obvious, that the higher rated player will usually win if he's being patient and not forcing things. Because what happens is the higher rated player generally has more positional knowledge and can figure out a plan. So that may just, help you rather choose whether or not to accept or offer a draw. So for example, I know if I'm playing a much lower rated player and he's doing well, but it's a very drawn position, I'm not accepting or offering a draw unless there's a time pressure issue. That's a different story. But assuming that the clock's not an issue, I will be patient and not accept the draw against the lower rated player because statistically and in my experience, he will make a mistake at some point. It may not happen for a while, but it generally does happen. And if I'm playing someone who's rated the same as I am or much higher, I might be more inclined to take the draw in that case, unless he makes a mistake, obviously. But it's these even positions where knowing your opponent's rating can be beneficial. So, for example, if I'm 1,700 and I'm playing a player rated 1,200, I'm not taking a draw in an endgame with no clock issues. But if I'm 1,700 and I'm playing a 2,000 player, then I might consider the draw because you also get draw odds. The nice thing about playing up, meaning your opponent is rated much higher than you, is that you'll get some rating points for a draw as well. So that's something to think about. And the bottom line is you don't want to change your game, I don't believe, based on your opponent's rating. Just play solidly. Don't assume your higher rated player is a chess genius. Don't give him too much credit and play nervous, hesitant moves. And if your opponent's lower rated, don't force things or don't assume that the game's going to win itself because even lower rated players can have a phenomenal night. And it's like I said earlier, because it bears repeating, all untitled players are capable of playing very well or very poorly. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so I'm going to change gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk about chess parents, specifically quote-unquote pushy chess parents. And these are based on scenarios that I've witnessed myself. Now, I want to say something up front, and this is very important. Most parents, the overwhelming majority, I should say, of parents are outstanding. You know, they just want their kids to do well. They're very respectful. And, it's the old 80-20 rule. It's in any situation, it's always 80% follow the rules and do what they're supposed to, and it's the other 20% that don't. You can apply the 80-20 rule to almost anything. And I know at my club, at the Long Island Chess Club, these stories I'm about to tell you about these parents has nothing to do with my club. Okay, at my club, the parents are outstanding. The kids are great. We're getting a lot of high school kids now playing, which is fantastic. And I'm fortunate that all the parents and kids at my club are outstanding. So these sort of horror stories I'm going to share with you, these were all things I witnessed at other clubs, mostly in larger events that I played in. Okay, so this is not from the Long Island Chess Club. I'm very blessed in that regard. We have a nice crew of parents and families, just great people overall. It's a great club overall. A lot of good people. Everyone just comes. They just want to play and have a good time. So now scholastic events are kind of a different story. My club is sort of an open club, so we have a mix of adults and kids. Usually our open tournaments, we'll have adults, we'll have some high school kids, even some younger kids like in second or third grade, a few of those, but it's mixed. Scholastic events, of course, are just for kids. And the tournament directors who run those, there's a special place for them, and they all deserve a medal because it can be a very difficult thing to manage. Now, interestingly, at scholastic events, the parents are not allowed in the tournament hall, at least in recent history. Basically, what was happening was the parents would be in the tournament hall while the kids were playing, and parents would start to accuse other parents of helping their child out. Okay, basically every time they coughed or scratched or did something, they would be accused of another parent of helping their child or kind of signaling a move. So it got to the point where the scholastic organizers just had to remove the parents from the tournament hall completely, which is why, again, at modern day scholastic tournaments, they have to wait outside. There's a famous scene, I think I mentioned it in an earlier episode, from the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, where, you see the tournament director's face and he goes, I want you all, to behave like adults. And you think he's talking, presumably to the kids, and then the camera pans and he's talking to the adults. So he's disciplining them more than the kids. But unfortunately, there's a certain reality to that. So just wanted to share some interesting stories. These actually happened. These happened at other clubs, not my club. And some of these happened a number of years ago. So let me share this first anecdote. So this was at another local club. This was long before I started the Long Island Chess Club, where the pairings went up, and the mom of one of the players, he was probably maybe in, I don't know, 9th or 10th grade, maybe 14, 15 years old. She complained to the TD that she didn't like the pairing because his opponent was rated much lower. Now, just a side note about that, and for those of you who are new to tournaments, I'll explain this to you. For those of you who've been around, this is familiar to you. A lot of parents want their kids to play higher rated opponents only because, a win would increase their rating more. And if you play a much lower rated opponent, it really doesn't do much to your rating. If you win, you might get a couple of points. Now, that's true for all of us. Nobody really likes to play down. Nobody wants to play someone 500 points lower. But that's how it goes. That's just inherent in tournaments. Not every round is going to be that way. You just have to accept that some pairings are going to be better than others. That's just the nature of how tournaments are paired. Now, once the tournament director puts the pairings out, you can't look at them and decide, oh, you know what? I don't like this pairing. I'm going to take a bye this round. It doesn't work this way. If somebody had said that to me, I would have been like, in a respectful way, like, you can't do that. You're either going to drop out or, you're going to play. You can't decide after the pairings go up. It doesn't work that way. But she was trying to convince the tournament director that, he should change it because she didn't like it. And what ended up happening was, she ended up taking a bye. She said, all right, we'll just give him a bye in that case. So she would rather have her child take a bye than not play simply because the rating was too low. Okay. I won't say more than that. I'll let you judge, but this is something that I witnessed. What was more disturbing was that the TD kind of allowed that, because I would have been like, no, you're not taking a bye. You're either going to drop out of the tournament or you're going to play. Like, you can't decide week to week whether or not you're going to play after the pairing goes up, because if you allow that, that sets a precedent and everyone's going to want to do that. And besides, it's against the rules. But this is something that I witnessed and was very surprised. So that's one story. Then another story had to do with trying to find out information about the opponent after the pairings went up. So this was at a major tournament. This was like one of those Continental Chess Association tournaments. I think this was upstate New York somewhere, maybe Foxwoods. But anyway, pairings go up and the parent's on a laptop and immediately looks up the opponent on the computer and tries to see, because you can do that if you have the person's USCF rating and USCF ID, I should say. You can go on the US Chess website and look at all the tournaments he or she played in, because that's public information that's posted for the USCF. So he starts looking and he's telling his son, okay, he played here and he played here, and it looks like his rating went up, this many points. I'm like actually following this. I mean, he was so loud, it was kind of hard not to miss it. But I guess he was trying to give his child an edge by simply looking up this person's rating and his tournament history online. And this is like seconds before the game, because basically the pairings go up. You have maybe 5 or 10 minutes before the round begins. So he's trying to just scrounge this last minute information, whatever he could gather on his computer about his opponent. I don't really know how that's going to help. It's not like it tells you what openings they play or whether they're, an attacking player or a positional player. It was just a little strange. But that's something else I witnessed. So moving on. Another story had to do with an issue with a draw offer. Now, I will tell you, as a TD, and I'm guessing most TDs would agree with me here, one of the biggest issues with the rules has to do with draw offers. Okay, and I talked about this at length in a previous episode, but just to review real quick, because as a TD, I always feel compelled to announce this as much as possible. The proper way to offer a draw is you wait until your clock's running, it's your move. You make the move on the board. You say to your opponent, I offer a draw, and then you press your clock. That's the proper way to do it. However, if you offer the draw differently, if you don't follow that procedure, it still counts. So technically, the rule book shouldn't say that's the right way to offer a draw. It should say that's the preferred way to offer a draw. Because if you just blurt out, let's say it's not your move. Let's say my opponent's moving and he's thinking, and I just blurt out of nowhere, I offer a draw. That counts. That still counts. And when you offer a draw, you can't take it back. Okay, so when you offer a draw, your opponent can take as much time as he or she wants to decide. And the only way that the draw would be considered declined would be as if they actually say, no or no thank you, or if they touch a piece or if they move, right? Because once you move, that's a declination of the draw offer. Okay. So at another major tournament, I see this young boy. He's maybe 7 or 8, and he's playing an adult who's maybe 35, and they're sitting a few boards away from me. And I happen to be looking at the game because I was kind of getting up from a move, and he makes a move, the young child does, and he says, I offer a draw. And, his opponent's thinking, and then what happened was, and I saw it as well, he realized that his move was actually winning. So this young child makes a move, and I won't explain it in a podcast because it's without seeing it, but basically his move wins a piece. There's nothing his opponent could have done. He would have lost a piece. So I'm seeing this, and of course I'm just staring. I'm not saying anything. And the adult, obviously he sees that, wait a minute, this is a winning move. He accepts the draw, but before that, I actually skipped a step. I'm sorry. So as the adult is thinking, the young child who made this winning move, I guess he sees it before the adult, and he actually says, I take it back, which of course you can't do. And then, the adult saw that it was a winning move, and he goes like, you can't take it back. And we saw this, and this was a sort of a clean incident because there was really nothing controversial. So the TD came over, and the parent came over, and the TD's like, no, if you offer a draw, you can't take it back. So the adult accepts the draw because he realizes that it was a winning move. And the parent sort of berates the child, starts yelling at him, why did you take a draw? Why did you take a draw? And it was a little disturbing. I mean, you can't tell a parent how to raise his or her child, but just the way that he reacted was a little unsettling and off-putting. And a lot of us were looking at him like, you serious? I mean, this was a very young kid who got nervous, and, he offered a draw to his much higher rated player, an older opponent. I mean, what can you do? I mean, he still got some rating points, as I said, because the adult was higher rated, but he was like 7 or 8. I mean, these things happen, but the parent was furious, and it was just a little unsettling to watch. I'll let you judge, but this is something that I saw many years ago in a tournament in upstate New York. And then last thing I'll share, this one's not too bad, but I'll share it anyway. This was several years ago. This one actually is the exception. This one was at my club, but it wasn't really a big deal. The parent asked me if, can other people please, stop watching my son's game. Now, this was towards the end of the night. He was doing well. Similar to the last story, his opponent was an adult with a higher rating. And, I said, all right, I'll ask them to stand back a little bit, but it's a chess tournament. They're allowed to watch. I just know it just didn't seem right for me to just say everybody like clear the room. It wasn't like, but I guess she felt he was getting nervous. So I said, okay, I said, can everyone just step back a little bit? That was about, as bad of an incident at my club that I ever dealt with, which really wasn't, because she was really nice about it. But, I explained to her after, and it was fine. It was totally cool. I basically said, I can't really stop people from watching. That's part of, I go, if they were exhibiting distracting behavior, that would be a different story. But that's all it was. So just wanted to share some stories there. So just to kind of recap, this whole thing, your opponent's rating, yeah, be aware of it, but don't force things against a lower rated opponent, and don't get nervous and scared against a higher rated opponent. Okay. And like, Jeremy Silman has said, International Master Jeremy Silman, who's like my idol as far as like chess teachers and chess instruction, all untitled players are capable of playing very badly. And I would add, they're also capable of playing very well, regardless of their rating. So, just be aware of that. And then I just wanted to share some of these interesting stories about chess parents. If you want to see some funny scenes regarding that, check out Searching for Bobby Fischer, the movie. But at any rate, I appreciate you listening. And as always, I hope you win your next game. Have a great day.